leverage starts to put pounds and pounds of pressure into your thoracic spine. And that's loading the spine in a very unhealthy way. So instead of having flexibility and movement in your spine starts to lock down. It gets real rigid. It does not allow for a lot of movement because your head's out here. And that becomes a problem because you got lots of stuff going on in here, plus your brain should not be out there in space, right? So it puts stress on a brain. So when you think about, this posture, this is a brain on fire. This is an unhealthy brain. So unhealthy posture means unhealthy brain. And we're looking at it through the lens of the curves in your spine. Okay. So you should have, so here's another diagram. How much does your head weigh? For every inch forward, you can add 10 to 12 pounds of weight for every inch. So your head should be about the weight of a bowling ball. Okay. On average, we'll say the head is 10 pounds. So every inch you shift forward, it adds 10 pounds. Well, we're not just, straight forward. We're often angling down. So the problem is, as we start to angle down, we put more stress. So at 60 degrees, we are putting 60 pounds of pressure down on our spine because that's how much our head weighs. And it's not a big deal if it's there, here, and there. But some people are in that posture all day long. And that's a problem because this spine is meant to move. And what did I just tell you? If you're hanging out here and you're down here and that's 60 pounds of pressure, what happens back here? It doesn't move. It gets real rigid. It doesn't want to move because it's protecting your brain, right? So we use posture as a way to measure the health of your spine. It's a window into your spine. So there, if you ever get that quiz question, posture is a window into the spine. And why is that? Because if we see distortion in the posture, it's telling us something of what's going on with the spine. So we also use the x-rays to assess how the spine is aging. And if you've tuned into any workshop, you know that the spine is meant to age in a very healthy way. If it's moving in a healthy way, I'm not talking just globally, if you're moving, you have healthy posture. Regionally, it's moving well. Segmentally, vertebra by vertebra, it's moving well. Then your spine should maintain that health, that structure for 90 to 125 years before breakdown. That means at 90, that's when your spine starts to break down, which is just so cool because we are designed in such a divine way. And yet, we see breakdown happening early on. I've seen phase 2 degeneration happening in teenagers. It's concerning. And so if we're not moving that spine in a healthy way and taking care of that spine, we see breakdown that takes place. And the first way we can measure that is through your posture. So if you've got distortion or you've had what's called forward head posture, we know that something's going on with that curve because that curve should be a nice C shape or a banana curve. So we look at your spine from the front and you can see how, that green line's the plumb line. Red line is the body. And as I just take you through this, okay, I'm going to use my markers here because I want you to see what we look at. You guys can start doing this at home, like just watching people as they walk by. But I'm looking for head tilt. So you can see this person has a head tilt this way. And you can see more of this left ear compared to the right ear. So that means he's rotated. Like his head is actually rotated this way. Okay, look at how much lower his shoulder is on that right side here. Look at how his hands are falling along the sides. See how this hand, we're seeing more of a back of a palm. It's rounded forward. Those thumbs should be pointing straight forward. And you can also see from the tips of the finger how much lower this one is compared to this side. And as we're looking at his feet, his foundation, again, those feet should be pointing straight forward. Now I cut it off, but right away I see this toe is toeing out. It's happening on both sides, but when we see that happening, we know something's going on with that pelvis right there. And again, you look at this person, this is just standing. So you have to look at how is this body moving? You add weight to this structure. You add more intensity, more stress to this structure. How does it uphold balance, movement, flexibility, right? So right away, we can see in how somebody's carrying themselves that their spine is under some stress. Okay, so that's why we use posture as a way to really measure that. So let's keep going to our next slide here. Let me exit out of there. Okay, so we also look at posture from the side view, okay? And just in case I want to annotate here. So as we're looking, we should see, can I move this thing around? No, okay. We should see that head lines up with the shoulder, lines up with that hip, knee, and ankle all the way down, okay? And with our person here, you can see how from the knees on, he is shifted forward. You can see how his hands are jutting forward too, this way. His hand should rest nice and comfortably right alongside his thighs, okay? And he's got rounding going on. So already we're seeing, you know, this part of the spine right along there is under more stress because he's got forward head posture. Okay? And I can see that tilt that's happening because I look at these all the time, but he's tilted. So I'm seeing more of a face along this side. Again, this is a way to measure the health of the brain and your structure. It's not until we take an x-ray where we really start to gauge the aging of the spine. Because oftentimes, for changes to show up on x-ray, it takes anywhere between 5 and 30 years. So if we're seeing any level of degeneration, if we're seeing curve change, which is phase 1 degeneration, it's been around for years, maybe decades, depending on the person. And it's not until we get into phase 2 or 3 where we get symptomatic. And what do most people believe in terms of when the problem started as it relates to their symptoms, right? If your symptoms just started, what do most people think? That's when the problem started. And when we start to dial in on the health of the individual and start to see some of these measurements, we see that I realize the symptoms started, but this has been going on a long time. Okay. Oops. Here. Okay. So start with the cervical spine. And I want to start with this because on the left is a pretty good cervical spine. Okay. You have a nice C shape. I'm going to get my drawings again. Oh, I get to annotate. It's great. So you should have a nice C shape in your spine, right? See how this is like almost a banana here. And you should have this angle right here should be between 25 and 30 degrees. Okay, that's your C1 angle. You should have nice, thick, fluffy disc space between each vertebra of your spine. And you should have vertebrae that are stacked on each other. That's a healthy spine. Now, this x-ray here, I want to give you a background on this person. This is a person in their 70s. Now, when they were in their early 40s, in a span of 3 months, they had numbness and tingling into their fingers. So much so, this is a nurse, so much so that she was considering disability. She couldn't lift things, she couldn't grab things. And she saw an MD, a neurologist, orthopedic surgeon, like all the specialties are just like poofing out of my brain. Saw all of the specialists, and they said it's going numbness, tingling, couldn't work anymore. A 3-month time span. They said, you know what? We don't know what it is, but maybe it's carpal tunnel syndrome, and I think we're going to try to do surgery on you and see if that helps. And this person said, you know, that doesn't sound right to me. I don't want to just take a stab in the dark and have somebody cut me up because I think that might be the problem. And this person was connected to a chiropractor who wanted to do more detailed exam findings. And so nobody on this person's team took x-rays. It wasn't until they went to the chiropractor that they took x-rays. And what feeds the hands? It's the neck. Everything that comes out of the neck is feeding the hands. And so they found at 40 that this person had some significant degeneration going on that they believed stemmed from an accident they had 10 years earlier. They had a motor vehicle accident. No images or x-rays were ever taken. I don't know what the care that they received following that accident, but they never really understood what was going on in the health of their spine following that accident. 10 years later, they started experiencing significant symptoms in a 3-month time frame that they were looking at disability. Okay. So within a very short period of time, this person actually got their feeling back in their hands. They were actually able to get their life back, continue working. Now, this is 30 years later, this is what their spine looks like. I'm sharing this with you because sometimes it's hard to think about what 20, 30, 40 years look like, what trajectory you're on. This person had a car accident at 33. Who knows what happened in their life prior to that? But they believe it was the catalyst to shift them into a trajectory that put them on a timeline to potentially go on disability 10 years later when their only symptoms were here. And now, you know, they were committed to, I mean, they've been getting lifetime chiropractic care, but really committed to it following that potential disability component and have really worked hard to maintain what they have. But as you're looking at this person's spine, you can see, you know, from here down, so fascinating. The body just tells a story, what things look like. I mean, their curve, they've got a 20-degree angle here. Okay, so it's starting to flatten, but you see a nice disc space here. You see some disc space here. See some disc space and a shifting here, but look at this. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So 5, 6, 7, 1. These guys. Guess where those nerves that exit out of your spine go into your hands? This is where they go. And you look at the degeneration that's happening. Look at this thinning of this disc, thinning of this disc. Look at the growth that's happened on the front of the vertebra to try and create some stability. This is a really intelligent process of a body trying to create stability within an unstable structure. When you get bony growth, that is the highest, action taken to create stability within the body. It is intelligent here. But is it it's a body that needs help, right? It's a body that's been through major trauma. And it takes years for this type of change to take place to counteract that stress. And so, I mean, we don't have the images from when she was 40, but we have these images here. And so this is when we're looking at your x-rays, we know that if you have a curve in your spine, then you're healthier. We know that if you're maintaining healthy disc space, your spine is aging in a healthy way. So if we see any changes happening or deviating from a healthy structure, that means that you're aging more quickly. That means that you are not moving in a healthy way globally, regionally, segmentally. That means you've got subluxation going on your spine. And that means, as a result of that, it's impacting your brain and your nervous system. So while pain is a massive motivator, you know, somebody having headaches or low back pain, I don't know, name any other pain, massive motivator, our body gives us significantly massive amounts of symptoms before that happens, in terms of our energy, in terms of how we're sleeping, in terms of how we wake up in the morning, our ability to fall asleep in a nice, easeful way, and how we're moving, our ability to maintain a level of movement. If we're not moving our spine in a healthy way on a regular basis, on a daily basis, then our spine is moving towards more stress. I can't, emphasize that enough. Our spine was meant to move. And so we have our healthy ranges of motion. We think, oh yeah, I do those. We'll do them more because that spine needs to be moving all the time. And if you've got segmental dysfunction, meaning that vertebra is not moving in a healthy way, as you go through that regional movement, it could be causing stress into how the brain is fed information. And that's where the chiropractic component is really addressing that movement or lack of movement. So that's where your adjustments are key to help restoring and supporting the health of the spine. Okay. So let's continue on here. Now, here's your thoracic spine. Your curve in your thoracic spine is opposite of the curve in the neck and the low back. Okay, so you can see how, let me draw here. You can see how there's this curve here and how this is like really straightened quite a bit. Again, anytime you get changes to the curves, that impacts the compressive forces and impacts how it moves. And oftentimes when we see this, to me, I'm looking at, well, is there a forward head posture that's stacking that thoracic spine, locking it in, so it doesn't allow it to move because of how much stress it's putting on the neck, right? If we go to your lumbar spine, let's go to your lumbar spine first. Your lumbar spine, sorry, I'll clear away these annotations. If you go to your lumbar spine, again, your lumbar spine should look like your cervical spine. And actually, these are both, should have a C-shaped there. So this is both showing some degeneration. This is totally straight, but you can see where this one has nice disc space right through here. This one has disc spaces that are changing. And again, when we go to our medical doctors, you've heard me ask this question or say this before, they will say this picture here is normal. They'll say it's normal aging. And I say, well, if it's normal aging, how old is this disc right here? And how old is this disc? Because they look different, right? They're the same age. So if it's normal aging, you should see the same thing happening with every part of the spine. So it's not normal aging. It is a spine that's been subluxated. It's postural distortion. It's a spine that's been under trauma and hasn't been taken care of on a daily basis and moved in a healthy way, for who knows how long, Again, how many of us know the importance of spinal hygiene from a very early age, right? How many of us have been in motor vehicle accidents? I can't tell you how many people who tell me, oh, I've been in a couple motor vehicle accidents. They were fine. It's no big deal. I was fine. I walked away from it. No symptoms. I'm like, that input to your body is absorbed somewhere and it's absorbed in your body. So, if you have falls or if you have sports injuries, if you have, any type of activity that requires repetitive movement, like anybody who, plays a violin or guitar or any piano, I mean, that requires the same motion movement, same posture over and over and over. Our spine's meant to move. So anything that puts us into a posture where we're rigid and stuck there, or in a posture here, it's going to start adapting to that posture, right? So I want to go back to this picture here. I think this is a great picture. Number one, it's actually showing muscles. So the reason we show this to you, so this person on the left has the head is above the shoulders. Here is forward head posture. And you can see how that changes the tension and the vectors of the muscles. And people will say, I go to my massage therapist, I get temporary relief. It just comes right back. Or I get adjusted and it just comes right back. Say, well, guess what? Your spine and structure have changed. So your soft tissue is going to always go to where your structure is. So it's number one about addressing how the segments are moving. And two, regionally how it's moving, and 3, how can you introduce some curve correction? Now, this is showing, your soft tissue muscles, but what else is there? Your spinal cord, your nerves, your vasculature, all the stuff that's feeding the brain, feeding the body. So, when you get change of a curve, when you get forward head posture, this is a sick brain, and this is impacting your vasculature. This is impacting how your body is fed, good oxygen, right? One study I always love to share, and this is a straightened thoracic spine, but they found that if you are older and you have a hyperkyphosis, which is a kyphosis is what this left curve looks like. That's a kyphosis. If you have an increased curve through your thoracic spine, meaning if you are humped this way, and you get some type of respiratory disease like pneumonia, COPD, bronchitis, then you are 144% more likely to die of that respiratory disease with that posture. So I tell you, if you have better posture as you're aging, you have healthy movement, that is, an automatic more vitality, more health expression. But how are ways, or what are ways that we really address the curves? Now, I like to show this picture. This is something that is new to our office. This is called the CerviGuard. But what it does, it puts your body in space into that proper posture. And we actually see massive changes happening, even with this guy who has that dowager's hump. Remember I talked about that dowager's hump? There's a perfect one right here. Look at that, right there. This is a great example of forward head posture. This guy has tall guy syndrome. He's tall, and I find that a lot of times they're leveling themselves out or shortening themselves to be in conversation with somebody who's shorter than they are. And then also they probably work at some level of desk, or they're on their technology all the time. But you can see that CerviGuard automatically puts his head right above his shoulders and starts to change the structure happening through here. And this can happen very quickly, like 4 to 6 weeks. We can see some massive changes. But when we're talking about a CerviGuard, there's a component of frequency that's needed, and this piece is a spendy piece. In the grand scheme of things, for this, I think it retails for $4.99. And in the grand scheme of things, $4.99 is really nothing when you're talking about medical intervention diagnostics. You can spend easily, $500 on an image that doesn't tell you anything one way or the other of what you should do, right? People are spending a lot of money on diagnostics. So this is something we have in our office. Typically, if somebody has more of a dowager hump, is more forward head posture like this presentation, that's where we start. But we also use something called let's go here, a Denner, which a lot of you have probably been on. This is a Denner roll with an E, and it is an engineered piece that has shown to actually restore the curve in the spine. And there's a Denner roll for the neck, the mid back, and the low back. Typically, we start with the neck for most people because it is closest proximity to the brain, and we call this the curve of life. So for most people, we will start with the neck. Sometimes we can couple a Denner roll that is in the neck and the low back, but we've got to work up to that because it can be really intense. The other thing that we use in the office, and again, when we're talking curve correction, it can take 1.5 to 2 years. It can take time. And I'm talking like every day, 15 to 20 minutes laying on this Denner roll, and you got to build up to that to get some curve correction. The other thing that we use is something called the posture pump. And we have one for the neck and the low back. And this here is the posture pump. But if you've got that dowager hump or that forward head posture, we're actually seeing change in the disc, and where we see potential disc herniation, compression of a disc, We see it impacting potentially the cord back here if we see that on an MRI. This helps decompress the space of the vertebra, so decompress the disc space and help restore the curve in the spine. So it can be really wonderful tools in your spinal care journey. But I would say a lot of things that we're using on most people are dental roll. Some people, we focus more on a posture pump. Some people, we'd focus more on a CerviGuard. It doesn't mean that, could everybody benefit from a CerviGuard? Yes, absolutely. Are they going to get faster change? Yes, they will. It's just the dental roll with the low back piece is $85 as opposed to that CerviGuard price point. And as with anything that you're doing, when you're restoring curves, you have to make sure you're getting adjusted. You've got to make sure that the spine is moving in a healthy way, that the brain is receiving good information, so that as you're trying to remold and restore curves, that your body's ready for it. Because if your body's not getting healthy input from the brain, if it's not getting adjusted and you're trying to do these things, you could cause more stress, right? So you want to make sure it's done in a healthy way. So let's close this up and see what I got here. So this is where I want to end. Age is a number. I think we can all agree that we've seen somebody in their 40s or 50s who you think, man, are they not 10 or 20 years older? Or their 40s and 50s where you think, are you sure they're not 10 years younger? Right? I mean, it's about our biological age, not our chronological age. How are we maintaining the health and the vibrancy of our body? What is our potential and how are we feeding our bodies? And I say feeding, and I mean that in many ways. The physical component of supporting how a body moves and taking care of your spine, the chemical component of, how you're feeding your body nutritionally, how you're allowing your body to handle any toxicities that it may be exposed to on a regular basis, whether it's air pollution, allergies, you can things that we're putting on our bodies or using in our clothes to wash, or is it the emotional component? How are we managing the stress of life, right? All three of those play a role in how we express health. Age is a number, right? I want to be the most vibrant me no matter what age I am.